going on, y'all? How you doing?
We are so excited that you guys are here with us on tonight. Thank you so much for joining us for Meet the Fombys on the couch.
On the couch with the Fombys.
Yes. Now, who are you?
Boom. I'm JD Fombys. How y'all doing?
So, hey, tell the people why they're coming on. Tell them a little about you, because I don't think people they may not know who you are.
Okay, so hello, I am JD Fomby. I am the husband to D Fomby, and I am a multiple, kind of like a Swiss Army type guy. I can do a lot of things, but the main thing that I'm known for is fitness, and I'm a fitness trainer. Entrepreneur. We have some, different things that we do business-wise. I'm also a musician, so I can play.
And a singer, and a psalmist, and a prophet.
All that stuff. Yep.
You just don't sound excited about it.
I mean, I'm excited. This is, I'm excited about it.
That's his excitement.
That's my level.
This is my excitement.
I mean, I'm right there. Yes.
Hey, you guys.
How y'all doing?
So listen, you guys, before we get on our topic, we want to take the time to invite you guys to Propheticon
4.0, the Unchurched
Conference.
Boom.
It's going to be held in Birmingham, Alabama, July 20th through the 22nd. And I'm telling you, you should be in the place. Why should they be in the place, babe?
Well, number one is going to be unconventional. We're going to do some things outside of the norm. So that's going to be one. And number two, if you're just ready to have an encounter that is going to be no fluff, no nothing, just people who love God and want to chase with the more after Him, the betterment of themselves. If you're trying to get to that next level in life, this is the conference for you, because it all starts with you, right? We're putting down the formality of religion and we are going after God, just full force, man. And we're going to have fun while we do it. So we want you guys there. We want you to invite somebody. We want you to bring the buses, bring your family members, bring everybody.
Bring everybody.
It's going to be an amazing time. I promise you that. It'll be unforgettable.
Yes.
It'll be unforgettable.
So listen, you guys, we're so excited that you guys joined us on tonight. We're going to just talk about, not allowing people to shut your mouth or to keep you from testifying as a couple. Right. So we're going to go ahead and just dive right into it. So, babe, I'll go ahead and let you get started.
So I was talking to you the other day, and I was thinking about how we was explaining to someone about how we met and some different things that we had been through. And it was in that moment that I started thinking about, in life you're going to face so many challenges. And one thing I do believe is that sometimes couples can fail to communicate, and they can kind of drift apart over time because the visions go this way or they'll go separate. So when I was telling this, when we were telling our story.
Wait. Before you get into that part, so you said that the vision can go separate.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens when the vision start going separate in a marriage?
Well, I think that's something that here's what I believe. I believe that the vision can change from when you get married to something else.
Yes.
And that's because as we chase to become better versions of ourselves, we evolve to different people. So sometimes people can be upset that you changing too much, but you can't expect the person to remain the same.
Right.
So I think that it's wise to do a check-in about where you are right now. What is it that you want for your life, and how I want for my life, and how we can merge that together to be one vision. We talk about it all the time.
Yeah, so one of the words that you said was check in.
Yeah.
Being able to communicate with each other honestly about where you are. Especially when you've been doing things one way all this time, and then now you're doing it differently. I think that's...
Well, I think the reason is not because you don't love the person, is that most humans are we're resistant to change.
That's true.
So I think if you don't check in, what happens is when that person starts to move differently, you start to suspect things, and imaginations can run wild. So one thing that I have been vivid in creating in my imagination is something that always includes to where we're working back to that vision. In my imagination, no matter how mad I get or upset I get, I make sure that I'm always imagining us in a better place from where we are now.
Yeah.
And I think that, you have to get past that initial anger, because if you don't, that's when you start making plans. That goes back to answer your question, where the vision starts to separate, because in that anger, you start to make plans without that person.
So let me ask you this. So can you be married and have two separate visions? I know
That's
it's
a very
kind of,
good question.
I know it's off topic, and we'll get back to
Yeah,
the topic,
okay.
but like
Well,
this is like a commercial.
No, I don't think so. Nah.
Okay,
I don't like
you're gonna
controversial questions.
so
I don't like controversial
I got
questions.
something to say, but go ahead.
I mean, the reason I said no is because I don't think that for the ultimate level of happiness and joy that you'll find in one another, it's until we have the same like ultimate end goal. Do I think we can have different parts of the vision? For sure. But when you're married, why would you marry someone and not have a vision for us? I don't know how that makes sense.
Okay, so here's my
saying.
stand. So here's my stand. I feel like you can have two separate visions with the same end goal in mind. So let me say.
Okay,
So for instance, because I may work a 9 to 5. You may work a business. I mean, you may be a full-time entrepreneur. I may work a 9 to 5.
Right.
And so I'm gonna have a vision maybe to move up in the company. Yours may be to grow your business.
That's a goal.
That's a goal.
That's not a goal. That's not a vision.
That's not a vision.
That's not a vision. No,
Okay.
That's a goal.
So that's a goal.
That's a goal.
Okay.
You're saying the same thing. You just putting. I feel.
Okay.
I feel you're.
Okay.
putting the wrong word on
So
it.
let's make it plain.
Okay.
So what's the difference between setting a goal and having a vision?
So having a setting a goal is something it's like increments and checkpoints of making sure you're becoming your best self.
Okay.
That's what I think a goal is.
So
if I have a goal, that means that I have a checkpoint in my life to where I believe that once I get here, I'll become a better version of myself.
Okay.
Right? So I feel like those are goals.
Okay.
A vision is like the marathon. The vision I have is me completing like the end of a marathon. But at certain checkpoints during the marathon, they have spouts where you get water, right? So you can measure your level of like how you're tracking, but the end vision is to run through that finish line. I feel like when it comes to a couple's goal to be united together, it has to be where they see them crossing the finish line of life together. So that's a vision. It has a much broader aspect because if you have the bigger the vision, the more you'll be able to sort of, especially when it comes to marriage, like the more grace you'll have for that person when you have a big vision. Like, because I don't see nothing I want to complete in life without you there. So whatever we getting through, we got to get through together because the vision is down here for us.
got it. So what I'm hearing you saying is that we can have small or have goals
Independent goals, for sure.
we can have independent goals that lead to the ultimate vision.
Right.
So okay. So what I find then is that a lot of times that I think that we are intertwining them or we are using them interchangeably in the wrong way. So for instance, someone can have a goal, like they have a goal in the marriage when they should be focused on the vision instead of the goal.
100%. Because I think if you do not check in, like for example, if the goal is separate and there's not communication between the two about what the goal is for the season we are in right now, that person has to become selfish to achieve that goal.
Okay.
So because of choices of selfishness, you'll take them as a personal sign of, oh, you're not feeling the same. Oh, this is not happening. What are you changing now? No, it's nothing personal. You already know why I have to do this because I have to do this for this goal that I have. But the vision is always with you.
Yeah, but so here's the conflict.
Okay.
Is that okay? So we know what the vision is, but sometimes we get lost in the goals,
100%.
which causes relationships to go like this because one party can become so tunnel vision on the goal that they forget about the objective of the marriage.
1,000%. Now that's a whole nother. That's a whole nother source within itself because I feel like that comes down to a point to where now you're talking about if a person can, like, is their ultimate goal for them to achieve something for themselves, or is the ultimate goal for them to be able to do that for their spouse, for their family?
Yeah, so recently I was talking to someone that I met on social media, and one of the things that she was talking about was, she was like, she's married, but when her husband talks, he's only talking about things that benefit him. He's only talking about making moves concerning him. And it's almost like he's leaving her out, even through conversation, with like the way that he moved. And so now she's feeling abandoned in the marriage. So if someone is in a situation like that, how do you overcome? How do you stick?
So the first thing I would say is I would look at, like, is this a repeated pattern? Like sometimes, and I'll speak not to like be in defense, but sometimes as a man, if you have to get to that alpha status, like, babe, I'm gonna do this, because he may be just casting vision and not meaning nothing by it. Okay. You see what I'm saying?
So it goes back to communication again, I guess.
Right. So that's my next point. Is that's why I asked, the first thing I'm asking is this a repeated offense? Okay. Or is this something new that he's doing? Okay. Like, you gotta inspect that, I feel like. So I feel like once a person inspects that, you can kind of, if you cannot conform the level of communication, you can kind of sort of judge the intent by the process of their patterns. Okay. So I'm not going to jump to the level of offense if this is a repeated pattern. If I know when he gets focused, he's always talking about what he's going to do. But if it's something now that this is like just out the blue, he's just always talking about him, and it used to be where it was always, baby, we gonna, and then when I do this, then I'm a, like, if it's none of that, and now it's just that, now it's time to raise some questions. Like, wait a minute, brother. So I think that's the first level to inspect that. The second level, I would say, is you have to find a way to have that. You have to give that man, if it's your spouse, I would say give him a chance to explain what he's saying. Because a lot of times, men, we use the wrong words. I can notice a lot of times that I've had to recant statements. And I would say, babe, totally disregard everything I just said. The sad thing is, men, they don't know how much we process to just say that.
Yeah, and also, men,
do you know how much brain cells it just took me to come up with something that you totally misinterpret? I'm out of brain cells at this point.
Whoa. Wait. Let's go back. So did I misinterpret? Did I misinterpret, or did you misspeak?
No, because I'm telling you, it's a misinterpretation.
No, because you just
comment
said,
right now.
You just
comment right now, fellas. Do not sometimes women just misinterpret. It's not that it's a misspoken thing.
Well, I think that sometimes women are, oh God, I hate to say this, but I feel like women are like more direct, and we just take exactly what you say and we run with it, or we believe it. So if you meant to say something else, why didn't you just say something else?
Because and
then when you turn around and you apologize for what you just said, as a woman, we're saying, oh no, you meant what you said the first time, because out the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks.
See, no, I knew you was going there.
I knew you was going
there.
And if
so
you didn't
let
mean
me tell
it,
you something. Here's the thing. What do you do when the Bible crosses you? See, when you're married to a Holy Ghost-filled woman, that's the first thing. Out of abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Ma'am, do not use the word right now in this moment. You know that's not what I meant. So here's the thing, though, and all jokes aside, like, here's what's crazy. And this is going to make so much sense. The men going to go crazy. Y'all back me up on this. Okay. So if a man gets silent, right, sometimes women will keep going until they get a response. But if they respond, a man literally sometimes is not ready to have that response, because he has to process the thoughts. We got to get out of our emotions. And we know we ain't trying to get into that argument or that. So if we don't have the time to formulate under pressure, we may use the wrong word. But it's not that we meant it. We just needed time to collect our emotions. But sometimes women don't give men the space, right? They keep going, or they'll say something to, like, that's detrimental that they know will provoke him to speak if you don't feel like talking. You know what I'm saying? I just feel like it's a respect level. Like, you gotta be able to give your partner grace in knowing that you chose them and they chose you, and that nothing that you would ever do would be intentful to spite or hurt them. And if you come from that place, it's much easier to give the other one grace. But if it's from a place where, like, as easy as y'all believe we meant to say it, the other 50% say you can believe we didn't mean to say it. Y'all just don't want to go to the good side.
Well,
you don't want to go to the good side.
Well, that's a good argument, but it's just sometimes it's just hard to reason.
But why is that though?
Human reasoning.
Is it from past experiences?
I don't know if it's from past experiences, because as a woman, we want to be able to take you at your word instead of feeling as if we have to interpret what you said. Because so this is where the spirit of confusion enter in relationships, because one minute you say, listen to me, take me at my word. Then the next minute you're saying, interpret my words.
Okay.
And so now we don't know in which circumstance or situation to interpret your word or to take you at your word. Now, which one is it?
I feel like that comes with the level of, number one, inspecting the repeated behavior.
The repeated behavior still have me at 50%.
Okay, so if that's the case, then that's the point where you should, look at it from an aspect of,
I got the answer.
There's no, well, what's the answer then? Because here's the way I think.
I don't feel like I want to give it to you.
Bro, first off,
because you're gonna use it against me. Now the downside of doing on the couch with the Fombys is for the simple fact that he'll turn around. He said, "Well, you did say this." So I don't know if I want to tell you like the answer.
But that's being selfish to the people who need help. Help people.
So I'm gonna help them, but you come on.
I'm not gonna use this. Oh, wait, because you'll also say, I don't want to talk about none of the stuff I said right now. So, if we're going to use that, then you can't use none of my stuff either.
Okay.
Is that respectable?
That's respectable.
That's a respectable barter right there?
Yes.
We're not really trading it. Is that a respectable deal?
Yes.
Okay. Shake on it.
Just take me at my word. That's what the Bible say. A yay is a yay.
Bruh. You not gonna no.
Okay, so do you want me to give you what the answer is? So in situations like that, I'll go ahead and give y'all the answers. This is not for me.
That's fine.
I'm give.
Somebody said it's a setup. I believe it's a setup too. That's why I'm
gonna tell you.
If it's right, it needs to be used again. I agree.
Oh my God.
Thank you. Ready. I appreciate that.
So look, let me say what
said it was right.
Okay.
Use it again.
So the
I
answer.
don't want to be wrong.
So the answer to this is to just make sure that you're getting clarity before you respond. Okay. And so that may mean that you're repeating what he said.
Right.
To make sure that you have clarity.
Like we did.
And you have an understanding. So what I'm hearing you saying is, okay, so babe, you want me to go in and do this. Babe, you said this is what you want me to do. So until that communication, it lines up. So I know that the answer is to just ask more questions.
Right, you got to dig deeper.
Dig deeper sometime. Also,
I did that today.
Oh wow! When?
What are you talking about? When? Come on, man.
No. When?
Yes, we did. When we was talking about the thing at the link.
Okay.
I came back out and I was like, so what are you saying? What I'm hearing you say is this and that. We was talking about some other business deal. And I was like, so this is why I'm thinking this. You was like, okay, well, the way I am is this. I was like, okay, well, this is how I thought about it. So I was asking, we was having a great conversation while I was asking deeper questions.
Yeah, so what happened is that we were talking about business deals. And so he was telling me about the way that he would normally handle it. And then I was telling him about the way that I normally handle it. And it's two different perspectives. Right. And so what we had to learn in this case is, okay, so where's the medium? How are we gonna agree? How are we gonna make this happen? Okay. All right, so we had to find a medium. So yeah, that was just our commercial. So let's get back to our regular topic about, being able to testify or share your story as a couple. Why do you think it's important for couples to share their story and, some of the things that they've gone through?
Well, just like I think if you can remember testimony service, right? I believe that some of you guys, growing up in church, or you went to some church, or you may have heard someone tell a testimony in church, and they're like reporting on what God has done, right? They would give a moment. Anybody have a testimony? But it's so much power in that. The Bible says that they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. So I think that when you look at it from a perspective of being personal, they overcame by the blood of the Lamb. That's the grace of God. Situation you made it through and out of your life. When you tell people about them, it reminds you of the grace that he brought you from and that he's always going to be able to bring you through. I feel like tied to a relationship is so pivotal because sometimes you can get so stuck on an issue that you will forget a year ago, 2 years ago, a moment ago that he brought you guys through something that you thought impossible. I can think of major life things that you and I have faced together
Already.
that we've already like been through, and it's so crazy because we're so both like focused and vision minded. It's very easy to forget the grace that brought us through those times. It's the same grace that is on this relationship to bring us through whatever comes next, because I remember having the mindset that this is it. This is like, so I feel like when you tell your story as a couple, you're able to inadvertently bring yourself back to a place to where you recognize, like, man, if I can have that outlook, and look how far I've came now with so much more wisdom and experience from what I've learned about myself, who I was back then, and how I normally handle a situation like this. So if it gets personal, then both couples can move forward together real quick. But if a person is always, if they take it separate, you still can be in a place to where you can always learn from you, that your change can either inspire the other one to be like, wow, this person is evolving before my eyes or something.
So it reminds me of just this past weekend while we were sitting here talking to one of the ministry leaders, and we were helping her through a circumstance and a situation. And then I began to testify and share at that moment something that I had been through in my past that I had never spoken out loud before. And it was something that you learned as well. And so what we learned in that case is that, you know, testimonies are important so that your spouse can learn even more about you, which gives you a better understanding as to why I handle certain circumstances the way that I do. And I feel like, you know, you can be with somebody for a long time, or you can be with somebody for a short period of time. But the relationship should continue to evolve. That means that you should continue to discover something about your spouse that you didn't know, or something that you noticed about your spouse that you hadn't before, finding out something new. Because I remember hearing a pastor say that the scripture in Genesis said, he who findeth, and it ends in ETH in the King James Version. That means that's a continuation word. That means that you're supposed to find your spouse like again and again, over and over, like a continuous action. Like never stop finding, never stop pursuing, never stop knowing about your spouse. And I think that give you a better understanding as to the person that you're building life with.
I feel like that's one of the most important things that a couple could ever do, is always look forward to where are we, like who are we growing as a couple, like who are we growing as together, but who also are we growing as individually. Because if I can understand where you're headed, then I understand like even my part in your process. You know, and sometimes what happens is adaptability sometimes leaves a person who was the situation here, they feel like they're misplaced. Like, because that person keeps it like adapting and evolving to it. Like if I knew you here and you're becoming something, let's say now you've worked your way up from, you know, being at the customer service, and now you're up at the VP. Who you had to become to get to a VP status is way different than who you were as the customer service person. So if I understand that, then I can understand my role, because I knew that, once again, back to what we're talking about, is that's the vision that we were speaking about earlier, because I knew that's where you were going. I feel like when we don't communicate in a way that we tell each other, we remind each other of the grace of how much we've came from, it gives you less tolerance for like mistakes or places like we was talking about earlier where you feel like, oh, did you mean that? It's like, no, because we talk about the vision all the time. I know he wouldn't do that because that's where we're headed together. So I feel like that's one of the things that really helps, is when you're able to talk about that, you know that that person who was back then, who probably went through whatever that hurt you or whatever, like they've grown since then. So give them that same grace, because they're still growing as you would want grace.
Yeah, so. That's so true. Let's see what someone is saying. Jaquella said, listen to understand, not to respond.
Right.
Listen to understand and not respond.
That's so great, because at the same time, it's so not easy. Let's just be real. Listening to not respond is very calculated. Like, it's hard because you're trying. Sometimes hard truths hit you hard. So once you get to a certain level, it's like I'm trying not to respond. So that's why I think that how a couple communicates and tonality means like everything is very hard to get to that level when you feel it going. Like somebody be responsible enough. Hey, let's bring it back, because we don't have to give that energy. But sometimes I agree that's good, but it's very complicated sometimes to do.
It's so complicated. It's
to
so.
do. Let's just be real.
So not only listen to understand and not to respond, but to listen and not be so defensive in your listening. Because there are times where people can listen, but they're listening, ready to defend.
It's hard not to defend yourself though. Because it goes back to that healing. Like, you gotta take it from an aspect of, this person would never say anything to hurt me, because at the same time, like, you get into that defense mechanism, you go back to like, yo, who gonna take up for me? Who is going? So it's sometimes you have to trust that individual is saying the things to constructively criticize. I'm talking about like people using it for the good. Now, ain't talking about other people. But
So let me ask you this. So what happens when a spouse is very open about her life, and then maybe he's not as open with sharing certain things? And so how do you as a couple are able to testify and help other people?
Okay.
Because sometimes, like, you can be delivered from
That's
something.
facts.
Because my coach, she wrote a book about this. It was called Shame After the Altar.
Oh man,
Yes,
that sounds amazing.
shame after the altar. So basically, the book is talking about how you go through this. You go through deliverance, you go through healing at the altar. But then when you go back to like the reality of life, sometimes you still shameful that you even experienced that, or you're shameful that you went through that. Shameful. You're shameful that that's even part of your testimony. And so, like, when you're in a relationship, when you know that this part of our testimony, it would help somebody else, but the spouse may not be ready to talk about that. How do you handle that?
Then 100% at that level of comfortability. Like, you can't play with that.
Yeah.
Because
But
no
what
matter
if
how much,
it's my story? It's my story too, though.
but what part did I play in it? Because here's the thing: if you're telling it, you can find a way to creatively tell a story without telling it with a level of like exposure. Like, I feel like if you can create a way, we're all wise enough to know what we're doing. So if you're conscious about that,
No. I will not say that we're all wise enough.
how
No, some people are foolish. The Bible talks about that. I'm not gonna say everybody wise.
Well, I mean, yeah, some people are definitely foolish. Like, those are ones that just need more maturing in life.
Yes.
Like, but in that level, I'm assuming that people are intentfully good. So be a good person, number one, obviously. But the truth is, I feel like it's a level of that person's comfortability. Like, you can't expose that at the level of, well, look how we helped, because you just created like rift at home.
Yeah, because I think like so many times that we have to remember that we are one and we're not separate. Right. So I can't say, well, I need to tell them this and that, knowing that it's gonna hurt my spouse. Because we're not separate, we are one. I think like if we get back to looking at each other as one instead of as separate beings. So one of the things that you told me before, you said that when I look at you and I want to respond maybe in a negative way, I don't because would I want to hurt myself when you look at me?
Right. That was like a way that you have to think in that moment, because I feel like as a man, we can be very, very spiteful sometimes, and just in general. So I looked at it from that aspect,
and
because
women.
and I looked at it because I really try to consider, what does it mean to become one?
Yeah.
Like, one. So I think about like a singular movement, one, the power of one, right? You have 5 fingers but one fist. You can do a lot when you push, but when you make a fist, you got a lot of power here, right? I can only hit you so hard with my open hand, but I can do something else with my fist. So together, what does it mean to be united? And the level of proximity between my fingers here, it's uncomfortable, but there's power there.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, I just came up with this analogy. It's uncomfortable. Like I feel more free like this because there's so much more I can do here. But to make an impact, we gotta get here.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like once you achieve that in your mind, that's why it's so important to talk about the vision.
Yeah.
It's so important to talk about where we're going. And, you know, because of that, I feel like it's also dual purpose because you do fall in love all over again with the person that is evolving before your eyes. They're becoming someone else that is always talking about like what they can, and then it inspires you to push them to become better. You know,
it's so many things I want to say. First, you have to be able to appreciate the fact that somebody else or your spouse is evolving. Because there are spouses that don't want their spouse to grow, and then what happens when one spouse outgrow the other?
So that's where I feel like reviewing expectations come in.
Okay.
So a spouse can outgrow because the other one has already hit a level of like euphoria to where they're already living in paradise. And can you judge that person if they don't want to go higher? Do you still love them for who they are?
I think you do love them for who they are, but let's talk about what the scripture said. Let's talk about what the scripture said, because the scripture said a house divided against itself will not stand.
Well, I'm not talking about somebody that is actively coming against
I'm
the
not.
vision of like
I'm not even talking about somebody that's actively. I'm talking about being divided. That when one spouse is growing and the other has become complacent, will that not cause division in the household?
Well, I feel like that's relative, and it's subjective to that individual couple's united goal. Because for the vision, or for the level of where they're going, it may only determine for one person to keep going, and I'm always going to have this. Now, I feel like because things can change, it's important to always review the expectation because it can change along that line. But ultimately, like to your answer, to your question, I feel like eventually they're going to part ways because, you know, I just don't know. I don't feel like you can have a successful, long-lasting marriage if you don't both have an expectancy for evolving, becoming better.
I don't think that they would necessarily part ways physically, but I do believe that they will part ways emotionally, mentally, and like spiritual, like the Bible said that it would be divided. And I believe, I don't know, y'all help me with this. I believe that cause limitations in the relationship.
100%.
I think that it caused limitations because it's so hard to evolve, and you have someone that's not growing with you.
100%.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Save for the point that a person can, they would just have to really lower the level of expectation for that person.
Lower the expectation from their spouse.
Lower it.
Ouch.
Oh
my God. So I guess this goes back to the scripture that says that know those that you labor amongst, because you're laboring amongst, with your spouse. And so there had to be signs or something that this person would be like this, or wait a minute. Now I've seen where both spouses are motivated and then real life situations happen, and it is just not that person they just become complacent. Ooh. So in those situations like that, I believe more grace is given.
For sure.
But for a spouse that is unmotivated, don't want to do don't want to move. They're like, they just, it's almost like,
they become lackadaisical or
Yes.
slothful.
Yes.
I would say that's different than someone who is just like, a sluggard, as the Bible would put it.
Yeah.
I think that that's just a person that you would have to take into account what they are currently dealing with, or if something traumatic happened that caused them to be like that.
Yeah.
Because I just don't see. But like I said, the only answer to that, I feel like, is to have low expectations. But who wants to live in a life that is, they're just tolerating someone else's level of acceptance on life? Like, I love the fact that both of us are go-getters, and I just feel like when I look at the level of, when it comes to what I see for us together, it always involves a level of us, of me becoming better, you becoming better, and us always like intersecting at the point to where we become that powerful hand, where we're always being able to make a powerful impact. So,
so does that spouse slow down?
ooh, man, you really got him tonight.
What?
I mean,
I'm just like,
loaded with these.
I don't know where this comes from.
Jesus.
First, I feel like it's off topic, but I feel like maybe it's necessary because these questions are just coming up in my spirit.
Okay. Well, do they slow down? I would say, because you try to balance between being one person and like what level of individuality do you keep as a husband and wife?
Right. So someone said it could cause hostility between the husband and wife. Finally, division.
100%.
Man.
100%. So I would say once you feel like, do I slow down? At that point, you have to have the conversation.
Yeah.
Like,
and
that's red flag right
honest
there.
conversation.
100%.
Not out of hostility, but really heartfelt, honest conversation, and letting your spouse know what you're going to need. And if your spouse decide to stay like right there, don't want to grow, but listen, I know there are spouses that will stay right here, don't want to grow, don't want to do nothing else but fully support the other spouse as they go forth. I think that's a conversation too that need to be had, because if I'm telling you, hey, this is how I feel, this is what's going on, what can I expect from you? Right. What do you want? And if you decide to stay here, I'm communicating with you. I'm taking off. I'm letting you know that I'm gonna take off. Right. And listen, I don't know how this is going to affect us.
Right.
Maybe we need
bring
in a third party.
Here's another question, right? So when you get to a point and they be like, you have that question, it's like, why submit to your husbands? Like, do you feel like that's a part of individuality where it's all about you, and the husband is maybe has a level of like, where does the submission part of that come in when it comes to, I'm just letting you know, like, does it mean it's okay if you have the right to do it, but according to the word of God? So
there's another scripture too,
right,
that says, submit ye one to another.
Facts.
But in a situation where
I feel like you do that, that's a dangerous path, because you can find so many scriptures to come back.
But that's what I was getting ready to say. So, like in a situation, I would definitely, like you said, it goes back to communication, because if my spouse or if you're expecting something else that I'm not doing, then I would definitely evaluate. If my spouse said, hey, you're spending way too much time, working on that business, you spend way too much time at that church, you spend way too much time with this person, like, I'm evaluating my whole life. And that definitely takes a mature person, because there are times where, I've heard spouses say, well, you can't tell me what to do, I'm gonna do it anyway. I made this post on social media that was controversial, and I don't even know why I'm bringing this up now, but it said, it basically said that pastors, if you have leaders in your church that's serving you but not their spouse, sit them down. Because because I don't think, this is just me, that you should be overly serving anyone and you're not serving your spouse.
I won
serving in business, serving in
1000%
church,
agree.
serving friends. Like, I just don't think no one should come before your spouse. Like, if you have a best friend and you don't consider your spouse a best friend, that's an issue. And like, I want to be able to call my spouse my homie.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I want to be able to call you homie and let you know, like, listen.
Right.
Okay? Okay? Because we wear different hats in this relationship. This is just ours.
Right.
In this relationship, sometime I may need that homie.
Right.
Other days I may need that lover.
Okay, bet. Take care of
But
and we bless God. Hallelujah.
I got off track. I forgot what I was saying.
What you want to find out about your spouse if you're looking for anything serving, you know, the pastor.
I just feel like, you know, your spouse should be, you know, number one and should be everything. Have it always been like this?
Like when?
With us, yes.
Oh yeah.
But in prior relationships, I would say no.
At all.
Yeah.
I was guilty of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I was 100% guilty of that. And what was
guilty of what part?
Serving, you know, doing a lot of like not making a lot of time necessarily for my spouse because I was always, you know, serving different things. It was ministry, it was this, it was school. I was in school at the time, but I wasn't intentful about making that time, you know, even though I was young. You know, of course, hindsight is always 20/20, but now looking at it from that aspect, the first thing you got to serve, like your marriage is a living, breathing thing.
Yeah.
That's why they say marriages die. You know, they don't say, oh, you got divorced. Like you had it. It's a divorce. It's a separation. It's a tearing. It's painful. It sucks. It is horrible. It's bad on, you know, children. It's so what I think that you should. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I have an analogy because that was so good that your marriage is a living organism that requires breath.
Man,
and it requires the breath of God in order to survive. Mm-hmm. And so when the marriage as a body stopped getting breath, it stopped living.
Facts.
And so in order for the marriage to work, because we can breathe separately, but because we are a unit, we can only breathe together through the breath of God. And when we stop getting what we need from God in order to serve the marriage, then the marriage is dead.
I feel like that's one of the things that people sometimes misinterpret is that, you know, once you get in a certain routine, like times are evolving, your spouse is evolving, whether they're telling you or not. That's why it's important to have times where it's like on the couch, right?
Take notice.
It's important that you just need to be like, hey, you know, like I think I asked you the other day, I didn't feel like I was doing anything wrong, but I was like, hey, is there anything I could do to be a better husband? You know, I just thought about it because I don't want to be caught off guard. Like I want to know if what I'm doing is adequate. And at the same time, if I feel like what I'm giving is not adequate or where you feel like it's not, we need to talk about that because it's so good to sometimes forget about what really aggravates you until you get back in that moment and you already at your limit with what you are willing to tolerate. You know, so then it just spills over to so many things that could have just been handled what we call, like, you know, in so many different, you know, avenues of business and different things. Like it's preventative maintenance, like it's system routine. You have to develop something, you know, because one thing's going to develop either your tolerance and your grace, or you know your grieving, because when it separates, you know, it's terrible. So you have to always. That's one thing I think we both learned from our last marriages was, you know, the level of living and breathing that you have to do together and give it life to make sure that both needs are being reciprocated at the level of where they feel like they're getting them, not how we're interpreting them, you know?
And I think that is important that you pay attention to your spouse. So like pay attention. A lot of times we don't pay enough attention to our spouse. And I'll give you a perfect example. So if your spouse, if she likes wearing white toenail polish, and then all of a sudden she started wearing red, you need to say, oh, I see you changed your toenail polish. You know, you need to say it, let them know, like, hey, I'm watching, I'm seeing, I noticed. And then you may want to go a little further. Is there a reason why you chose red? You know, like you may want to go, you may go a little deeper. But all of this builds up to, as part of your testimony, even in marriage, is learning how to communicate. And once you learn how, I think communication is an evolving type word, like, because you have to learn how to communicate.
T-I-O-N.
Yeah, it's a
needed.
And it's a continuation,
right?
Because the way that we communicate in one season may be totally different in the next season. But communication is definitely key,
right?
And sharing, you know, testimony. And I think that it's going to be important that we learn how to share our testimony amongst each other, so that we can, one, have a better understanding of the person that we're with. And also, I think those testimonies need to definitely start at our childhood. Man, if you can learn more about your spouse from the childhood standpoint, oh my God, the way that you respond and react, to your spouse will be totally different. Let me share this with you guys, and I know that we have to go. So, years ago, I struggled so hard with forgiving my mom, and she's deceased now. And I struggled just so bad. And I just, every time I would see my mom, it was like I was barking at her. I was just like angry at her. And I could never just see her as a mom. I always saw her as the person that hurt me. And I didn't want to, but she would just always trigger me. And I was like, God, I need help. I need help with walking in forgiveness towards my mom. And the Lord told me, he said, D, ask your mom about her childhood.
Wow.
When I found out about my mom's childhood, oh my God.
Wow.
That's what I needed in order to forgive my mom, was to learn where she came from, the things that she have overcome, and things that have happened to her. And it made me understand that although I wanted my mom to maybe love me the way that somebody else's mom did, in my mom's mind, she was, because this was her capacity based upon what she had gone through. So I'm saying all of that to say is that when you truly understand, like, your spouse, asking them about their testimony, asking them about things that they've overcome, things that they've gone through in their childhood, it'll make you look at your spouse differently, even after your spouse have hurt you.
1000%. I don't think I could have put it any better, because there's a certain level of grace when, like, that sort of opens up in your heart when you realize what the person had to do before you got there. Like, before you guys had, you all, like, issues, or maybe your victories, your losses along the way. But before you found each other, sometimes finding out where they were, you can't help but your heart opens up, because if you really truly love them, you will start to literally feel like, man, if I could have been there during that time, I would have never let that happen to you. I would have did this. My wife shared some stuff with me, and, you know, I've been through some stuff. We've both been through some stuff. And we both have had those moments to where, like, yo, sometimes you forget how strong you were, because you feel like what you're facing, your capacity has grown, and you have totally disregarded how far you come. And when a spouse hears, I feel like when you love that person, it's a godly spouse, and you realize, like, how far they've come just to be able to make it to be with you, you can't help but open up a level of love in your heart to where you're like, you know what? It's me and you it's me and you against the world. And I feel like that's where sometimes couples miss it, because they spend the communication part of it debating, arguing, fighting. And, you know, when you have a resolve to where you're going to always talk about the things that you guys overcame in some way, form, or fashion, or you're making that a part of the on the couch time, or just sitting around laughing, watching a movie time. You just don't know how much healing and how much that draws you closer to being one.
You know, one of the things that I encourage everyone before we go is to extend grace to the people that you love. Extend grace to your spouse. It's crazy that we can have so much grace for everybody outside of the household,
Right.
but we have no grace for the people that's in our household. And so I think like we need to expand grace, like just how you'll have sympathy and empathy for other people as you hear their testimony. Have sympathy and empathy regarding the one that you're building an entire life with.
Right.
Grace is important.
Facts.
Someone said that was
That's you almost said it.
there it is. Wait.
Okay.
What's that? Okay, that was so good, D. When you know the battle struggles that you've overcome and you're the recipient of the new them, it's powerful.
It really
so
is.
good.
So good,
So
Sharon.
good. So good. Sometimes when a spouse hurt each other verbally, sometimes saying I'm sorry is not enough. The scab has been found. Listen, that is a whole nother live
We'll have
right
to do a
there.
live on that.
I'm gonna
You're
very
very right.
screenshot this.
Okay.
Okay, I'll screenshot that because that part right there,
right.
I do
We'll
want to
talk
talk
about
about that.
Yeah.
That's really
Ooh,
good.
the
So
power
we'll
of
talk
your
about
words.
that. So listen, you guys, we want to say thank you so much for joining us, and we pray that you will learn to hear your spouse testimony, extend grace unto them, and may God open up the doors of communication, open up your heart so that you can communicate openly and honestly without feeling as if you have to hide a part of you in the relationship. May you be able to openly expose yourself in a relationship. And I would say, just give it a try. Just give it a chance. Like for me, I am being so vulnerable in this marriage like I've never been before. And it's new for me. But I said, you know what? I don't have anything to lose. Here it is. Do. And so, you know, so this is my vulnerability. So that's all I gotta say, babe.
Well, I think that I love your level of vulnerability that you're giving, because I'll be honest, I literally have never cared about anyone, you know, the way that I care about you. And I did not know that I had it in me to even love somebody like that. So, you know, you brought that part out of me, which makes me want to become a better communicator and find a way to, you know, grow with you together. So it's dope, man. Like, y'all been through enough stuff.
I told y'all he
keep the
loved me.
love going. Like, if you with your lady right now tonight, apologize. It only matter, ladies, you with your guy, but because it's not bigger than what you guys have right now. And life and breath, you have that now. Make the best of it.
Yes.
We love you guys.
We love
Thank
you
you guys for tuning in so much.
Give grace to each other. Hey, can I tell them this one last thing?
I already did my thing.
I know, but it was so important. Can
I
tell
know
them?
you can tell them, but like
Then we'll
act
do
like I
this
did.
together. And then we'll do this
No,
together.
it's messed
So
up now.
I just want to tell them this. When you said something that you said, offer forgiveness because none of that other stuff really matters.
Right.
Let me tell you guys this. When I saw my mom on life support, as much as we had gone through in our life, and I thank God for the restoration that we had in our relationship, but when I saw her on life support, let me tell you, none of the things that we used to argue about, none of the things that tried to keep us apart, it didn't matter right or wrong, it didn't matter good or bad, none of that mattered. And I'm saying this to say, don't wait until someone is on life support before you decide that none of that stuff, none of that discord, none of the things that the enemy wanted to use to keep you guys separated or divided matters. Right. Don't wait until it's too late before you understand what truly matters in your relationship. Take it from two divorcees that have now remarried. So we understand. Okay. All right. We love you guys.
Love y'all. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you so much
Appreciate
for
you guys
watching On the Couch.
on the couch with
the Fombys. We love you guys.
Peace. See y'all later. You know what? It's still on, so I have to cut this part off.
No, you gotta keep smiling like this. You gotta keep smiling.
I'm smiling.
Just keep smiling till I hit. Thank y'all.
To the right.
Thank y'all.
To the right. What are you doing?
I just want to say, hey, Faith. Hey, Morgan. Hey, Michelle. Hey, Cheryl. Hey, happy birthday, Catherine. Okay,
All right.
Faith Rogers. Hey, hello, one. Hey, y'all, Deborah. Okay. Oh, that's it. Thank you. Growing apart mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Okay. Ooh. I'm gonna screenshot that one too.
Which one say?
What if the person refused to change?
Ooh.
Oh, I got it.
Wow, this is an aggressive screenshot.
Sorry.
Move the thing out so we can see the rest. This is all still live. I'm weak.
Okay. All right. Love you guys.